Live 89.5, your island, your station.
And a very good afternoon, Phuket. Nick Anthony here, back with you on Going Green, show number 96. I do hope you're having a fantastic afternoon. Been enjoying the sunshine and even been down on the beaches. It was beautiful this morning. The waves were up a little bit. There were some surfers out and the sun was out. I've got a special guest in the studio with me just now, Mr. Jason Wilder.
Hello, Nick. How you doing?
Hello, buddy. Nice to see you. Nice to have you on the other side of the table, so to speak.
No, it feels very strange being actually in the guest position.
Well, now you know what it's like. I can put you under some pressure.
I know, yeah. I feel the pressure. How are you doing, Nick, anyway?
I'm doing well, mate. Thank you.
I've got to say, big respect all the time for your views and guiding people towards doing better things on the island. I see you as a kind of guru here.
Thank you, mate. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much people actually listen, but we do hope they do take in a little bit at least.
This is it. It's getting there. It's getting there.
We see step by step. We're seeing fantastic action on the beaches over on the West Coast. The communities come together. The locals, the NGOs, the schools,
green clubs.
The green clubs are popping up
on the rise. It's like an obsession. Some people now. It's brilliant.
It's the rise of the lichens. Watch out. The green clubs actually have a new one starting on Monday, 1 p.m. in the afternoon on Monday at the Patong municipality. Is the first meeting for the Patong Green Club.
Brilliant. Well, that's somewhere that always will need concentration, won't it? There's a lot of people sort of flood into that area, so yeah, good.
It has its challenges, and none other than 125 tons of waste a day.
Ooh, wowzers.
Which currently mostly gets trucked over the hill. So transportation, incineration, landfill, etc., etc. So
it's all rubbish, literally.
Well, about 50% of it is compostable.
Well, this is it, yeah.
Quite amazingly, so
that's positive rubbish.
We can by using it on the ground, we can reduce half the tonnage going over the hill.
See, that's the thing. I've always been a fan of good rubbish.
Good rubbish.
Yeah, I like good rubbish.
Well, listen. Speaking of rubbish. We are reading and have been watching an interview by Russell Brand with Jeremy Paxman on BBC. That was on Wednesday night.
It's spread like wildfire, and it's brilliant, and with very good reason. I'm happy about this situation.
Now, here we are. We're talking about Russell Brand on the Going Green show. What's that all about?
Well, he's come from being a stand-up comedian who basically was very hardcore, very on the edge, always very outspoken. He's the first to admit that he had a lot of problems with drugs in his earlier years. He wasn't, if anyone's read his book called My Bookie Wook, he's got a very sort of like a dark past, which he readily admits, but he's turned it into a positive. He turned the leaf. He no longer sort of gets involved in all that hoo-ha of getting himself into all states, and he's thinking very clearly now. He's definitely an outspoken lover and fan of yoga, and he's a great sort of ambassador of the yoga movement, I guess. Even myself has been considering it because of this guy. But more than that, now he's become a very fluid speaker of change in the world. And during this address with Jeremy Paxman, who usually, if our listeners don't know, is one of the guys who plays devil's advocate quite often in arguments between politicians and heads of figures of power, and if he definitely doesn't agree with what they're saying, he speaks for the people, and he tries to bring these politicians down to reality. And he's a very hardcore speaker himself, and he's brought Russell Brand in to find out what his vibe is and what's going on. And Russell Brand has held himself very well, and he's basically calling for a change. Not only calling for a change, he's marking that this is the time, and there has to be a revolution of the mind now. And I think it's amazing.
This is the turning point.
Yeah, well, this is it. And it needs someone with such a high-profile character and such a likable character as Russell Brand. It's one of those. It's like with rock stars where most guys want to be him, most girls want to be with him, to use a nicer way of saying it on the radio. But I think that he's just got this great personality now. He's very funny, and he brings it across as non-serious as well as being the most serious thing ever. He's got the whole paradox thing going on, and he's just brilliant. He's just very cool. And some of the things he's saying, I know that you want to quote now, that's been read upon the Guardian as well as covering it.
Yeah, there was good article in The Guardian just saying that effectively he's been able to say what no politician or pundit would ever dare say, that without dramatic fundamental change, the prevailing political and economic system is broken and hell-bent on planetary level destruction.
Yeah, and basically he's saying we need to find alternate political systems, to which Jeremy Paxman says, well, what are they then? He's like, all right, Jeremy, give me a moment. I've only just come up with these things. I can't just create everything at once. So again, he makes it fun. He makes it funny. He makes you warm to him. And the things he's saying is bang on the nail. It's just a repetition. The politicians aren't changing. We're seeing this daily on the internet. On your show, you're talking about all these wrongs that are going on in the world. And yeah, of course, we can all start recycling more. We can start saying no to plastic bags in shops. We can start putting more people in cars, for instance, rather than just one person driving around in a gas guzzler. We can all do that, but as well, he's calling that the big corporations need to start being heavily taxed, being punished for the things they're doing, and they're not being. And it seems like, and it's obvious that politicians do know what's going on. They're not stupid people. They're all very educated people, and he basically is calling them out and saying, this is wrong. We all know it's wrong. The Houses of Parliament, even, do you notice where he says the Houses of Parliament have the same furniture as Eton and as Oxford and all these kind of high-so schools, and he goes, and that, if you look at it, that can be seen as where some people feel very uncomfortable being in there, whereas all the old boys club will be like, oh great, this is where we belong. It's really well done how he delivers it all, and he's basically saying how they need to be shown out for what they are. We need a new alternative political system, and he's done it really well. He's delivered it amazingly well.
He, as expected, he got some pretty tough responses back in from the government, effectively, and from big business and the press that support big business. The Independent described Brand as Britain's most trivial revolutionary. They actually slammed his Newsnight performance as the ultimate expression of slackerism, a political theory with roots in teenage angst, mild rebelliousness, and a pie-in-the-sky leftism that wants to pull down the walls of the politics, then sit around smoking pot in the ruins.
Yeah, but you know what? I think that the people who read that, who take it seriously, are not going to be long till they're down in the ground.
Correct.
It's going to be the new people who are tuned in and turned on, who are appreciating every word and hanging on his every word that he's saying, are going to be the ones who are going to blossom and become the beautiful fruits and the beautiful flowers of the new generation.
Correct. This article in The Guardian which was written very well, and says, but these and other critics simply missed the point. By focusing obsessively on the one issue that Brand has never voted in his life and rejects democracy in its current form as a viable system, like most people, he says, I'm utterly disenchanted by politics. But Brand goes on to say that, like most people, he regards politicians as frauds and liars, and the current political system is nothing more than a bureaucratic means for furthering the augmentation and advantages of the economic elites.
He's got it. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's talking about, and not doing bad for a person with crazy hair, quite a good sense of humour, who doesn't know much about politics. Who, when Jeremy Paxman asked him, that's his answer. He says, "Well, why shouldn't I be involved? Why shouldn't I have my say? I'm a person with crazy hair, quite a good sense of humour. I don't know much about politics. I'm perfect for the job." It's like, he's brilliant. And also, as we're on Going Green as well here. When he says as well, when Paxman says, you want a revolution, Russell, you want a revolution. And he says, yes, because the planet is being destroyed. We're creating an underclass and we're exploiting poor people all over the world. And this needs to change. He's nailing it. He's absolutely nailing it. I think big respect to him. Big love to him. Big love to you, Russell, if you're listening.
We'll send him out a big hug here from Phuket. The end of the article went on to say that if we want our children to inherit a habitable planet, rather than bashing Brand for not having a more coherent solution, we need to start being part of it. Now, with every solution comes a question. If you don't ask the question, you're not going to get the answer. And many of these issues don't have all of the answers yet. We don't know what the answers are, but we know which direction we need to go in.
For sure. And it's definitely not the way it's going right now.
So big up for Russell Brand. And And we'll come back in a minute and we'll play that interview.
He's brilliant, considering he's such a swine.
Now, Jason, before you blast, you're playing this evening up in Maikau.
In Maikau, yeah. I'm going to go and play a bit of music. Chill the people's
Very
souls.
good. Is it
I might drop some bits of Russell's quotes in there as well.
Is it an open party? Can people come?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's called The Great Escape, and it's kind of the Great Escape from Phuket, because it's up in Natai. It's the Maikau Dreams in Natai. It's a beautiful place. Dramatic beach up there, and this is the backdrop for my DJ set. Is going to be the beach behind, the sea roaring behind me. Last time it was, and it's a beautiful place, beautiful bars, beautiful people, and if you fancy just getting off the island for the evening and come in, they've got some great deals on the rooms as well for the party nights. I know they're going to be sort of doing more of this in the future as well, and just giving people the chance to get, because it really does. If you work here on Phuket, it really does you feel the difference. Once you've gone over that bridge, you do feel a little bit like you're actually on holiday. So, yeah, people are welcome to come along.
Sounds great. So to get there, you actually go off Phuket, off the Saracen Bridge, go up about another 5 miles to Koh Loi, which is the small town. At the traffic lights, turn left. You go down nearly to the beach, and there's a road off to the right-hand side, and follow the signs down to the Maikau Dreams.
Exactly that. Towards the hot springs, there's a sign for hot springs as well. I'd like to go to the side.
That's a little hidden away place that people don't know about up there. It is fantastic.
It is. It's beautiful.
You wouldn't think that Phuket would be so in tune with and indeed enjoying its hot springs, but in these very chilly evenings, which is down to 24 degrees.
Oh, I know. I wear long johns at night.
Nearly put on a jumper the other day.
Where's my jumper?
Thank you very much, chilled. Jason Wilder, surprise guest, and very nice to have you on. Thank you, Jason.
Nick, always a pleasure. Thank you, and great. I love the show, and love your tips on how to get us a little greener.
Well done, buddy. Enjoy your night tonight. That's Jason Wilder, and here is Crazy Icehouse. And welcome back to the Going Green, show number 96, and thanks so much to Jason Wilder there. Popped in to talk about this Russell Brand interview with Jeremy Paxman on Newsnight. This is on Wednesday evening. We don't seem to have the strongest internet connection today, but I'm going to give you a couple of minutes of that interview, give you a taste of Russell in action. Let's pull this in. Okay, this should be Russell Brand and Jeremy Paxman.
When people talk about politics within the existing Westminster framework, I feel a dull thud in my stomach and my eyes involuntarily glaze, like when I'm conversing and the subject changes from me and moves on to another topic. The combination of distaste for mainstream politics and overweening vanity identifies it immediately as the work of Russell Brand, comedian, actor, and now it seems political theorist. 4. Is there no limit to the man's talents? He's now guest editor of the venerable left-wing magazine, The New Statesman. He wants a revolution, he says. Russell Brand, who are you to edit a political magazine?
Well, I just suppose like a person who's being politely asked by an attractive woman. I don't know what the typical criteria is. I don't know many people that edit political magazines. Boris, he used to do one, didn't he? So I'm a person with crazy hair, quite a good sense of humour, don't know much about politics, I'm ideal.
But is it true you don't even vote?
Yeah, no, I don't vote.
Well, how do you have any authority to talk about politics then?
Well, I don't get my authority from this pre-existing paradigm, which is quite narrow and only serves a few people. I look elsewhere for alternatives that might be of service to humanity. Alternate means alternate political systems.
They being?
Well, I've not invented it yet, Jeremy. I had to do a magazine last week. I've had a lot on my plate. But here's the thing that it shouldn't do. Shouldn't destroy the planet. Shouldn't create massive economic disparity. Shouldn't ignore the needs of the people. The burden of proof is on the people with the power, not people like doing a magazine.
How do you imagine the people get power?
Well, I imagine there are sort of hierarchical systems that have been preserved through generations.
They get power by being voted in.
Well, you
That's
say
how
that,
they
Jeremy,
get it.
but
You can't even be asked to vote.
It's quite a narrow prescriptive parameter that changes within the.
In a democracy, that's how it works.
Well, I don't think it's working very well, Jeremy, given that the planet is being destroyed, given that there is economic disparity of a huge degree. What are you saying? There's no alternative. There's no alternative.
No, I'm not
just this
saying
system.
that. I'm saying if you
Brilliant.
can't be asked to vote, why should we be asked to listen to your political point of view?
You don't have to listen to my political point of view, but it's not that I'm not voting out of apathy. I'm not voting out of absolute indifference and weariness and exhaustion from the lies, treachery, deceit of the political class that has been going on for generations now, and which has now reached fever pitch, where we have a disenfranchised, disillusioned, despondent underclass that are not being represented by that political system. So voting for it is tacit complicity with that system, and that's not something I'm offering up.
Well, why don't you change it then?
I'm trying to.
Well, why don't you start by voting?
I don't think it works. People have voted already, and that's what's created the current paradigm.
When did you last vote?
Never.
You've never, ever voted?
No. Do you think that's really bad?
So you struck an attitude, what, before the age of 18?
Well, I was busy being a drug addict at that point because I come from the kind of social conditions that are exacerbated by an indifferent system that really just administrates for large corporations and ignores the population that it was voted in to serve.
You're blaming the political class of the fact you had a drug problem?
No. I'm saying I was part of a social and economic class that is underserved by the current political system, and drug addiction is one of the problems it creates when you have huge, underserved, impoverished populations. People get drug problems and also don't feel like they want to engage with the current political system because they see that it doesn't work for them. They see that it makes no difference. They see that they're not served.
Well,
I say that
it doesn't
the apathy,
work for them if they don't bother to vote.
Jeremy, my darling, I'm not saying that the apathy doesn't come from us, the people. The apathy comes from the politicians. They are apathetic to our needs. They're only interested in servicing the needs of corporations. Look at what ain't the Tories going to court and to taking the EU to court because they're trying to curtail bank bonuses. Is that what's happening at the moment in our country? It is, isn't it?
Yeah, there is.
So why am I going to tune in for that?
You don't believe in democracy.
No,
you want a revolution, don't you?
The planet is being destroyed. We are creating an underclass. We are exploiting poor people all over the world. And the genuine, legitimate problems of the people are not being addressed by our political class.
All of those things may be true.
They are true.
But you took... I wouldn't argue with you about many of them.
Well, how come I feel so cross with you? It can't just be because of that beard. It's gorgeous.
It's possibly
And
because...
if the Daily Mail don't want it, I do. I'm against them. Grow it longer. Tangle it into your armpit hair.
You are a very trivial man.
What do you think I am, trivial?
Yes.
A minute ago, you were having a go at me because I want a revolution. Now I'm trivial. I'm bouncing about
I'm
all
not
over the
having a
place.
go at you because you want a revolution. Many people want a revolution, but I'm asking you what it would be like.
Well, I think what it won't be like is a huge disparity between rich and poor, where 300 Americans have the same amount of wealth as the 85 million poorest Americans, where there is an exploited and underserved underclass that are being continually ignored, where welfare is slashed, while Cameron and Osborne go to court to defend the rights of bankers to continue receiving their bonuses. That's all I'm saying.
What's the scheme? That's all I'm asking. What's the scheme? You talk vaguely about revolution. What is it?
I think a socialist egalitarian system based on the massive redistribution of wealth, heavy taxation of corporations and massive responsibility for energy companies and any company that's exploiting the environment. I think they should be I think the very concept of profit should be hugely reduced. David Cameron says profit isn't a dirty word. I say profit is a filthy word, because wherever there is profit there is also deficit, and this system currently doesn't address these ideas. And so why would anyone vote for it? Why would anyone be interested in it?
Who would levy these taxes?
I think we do need to, there needs to be a centralised administrative system, but built on...
government?
Yes,
There needs to be a government.
Well, maybe call it something else. Call them like the admin bods,
Right.
so they don't get
And
ahead
how would
of
they
themselves.
be chosen?
Jeremy, don't ask me to sit here in an interview with you in a bloody hotel room and devise a global utopian system. I'm merely pointing out that the
You're
current...
calling for revolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm calling for change. I'm calling for genuine alternatives. I say when there is a genuine alternative, a genuine option, then vote for that. But until then, don't bother. Why pretend? Why be complicit in this ridiculous illusion?
Because by the time somebody comes along you might think it worth voting for, it may be too late.
I don't think so, because the time is now. These movements are already occurring. It's happening everywhere. We're in a time where communication is instantaneous, and there are communities all over the world. The Occupy movement made a difference, even if only in that it introduced to the popular public lexicon the idea of the 1% versus the 99%. People for the first time in a generation are aware of massive corporate and economic exploitation. These things are not nonsense, and And these subjects are not being addressed. No one's doing anything about tax havens. No one's doing anything about their political affiliations and financial affiliations of the Conservative Party. So until people start addressing things that are actually real, why wouldn't I be facetious? Why would I take it seriously? Why would I encourage a constituency of young people that are absolutely indifferent to vote? Why would we? Aren't you bored? Aren't you more bored than anyone? Ain't you been talking to them year after year, listening to their lies, their nonsense? Then it's this one gets in, then it's that one gets in. But the problem continues. Why are we going to continue to contribute to this facade?
I'm surprised you can be facetious when you're that angry about it.
Yeah, I am angry. I am angry. Because for me, it's real. Because for me, it's not just some peripheral thing that I turn up once in a while to a church fete for. For me, this is what I come from. This is what I care about.
Do you see any hope?
Remember that? Yeah, totally. There's going to be a revolution. It's totally going to happen. I think not only I ain't got a flicker of doubt. This is the end. This is time to wake up. I remember I see you in that programme where you look at your ancestors and you saw that when your grandmother had to brass herself or got fucked over by the aristocrats who ran her gaff, you cried because you knew that it was unfair and unjust. And that was, what was that, a century ago? That's happening to people now. I just come from a woman who's being treated like that. I've just been talking to a woman today who's being treated like that. So if we can engage that feeling, instead of some moment of lachrymose sentimentality trotted out on the TV for people to pore over emotional porn, if we can engage that feeling and change things, why wouldn't we? Why is that naive? Why is that not my right because I'm an actor? I mean, I've taken the right. I don't need the right from you. I don't need the right from anybody. I'm taking it.
Russell Brand.
Amazing interview. Russell Brand there, thanks to Jeremy Paxman. That was on Newsnight from the BBC last Wednesday. Stay tuned. This is Nick Anthony. I'll be back on Going Green, show number 96. Coming up in just a moment, The Calling and Deacon Blue. Welcome back and thanks for listening. Nick Anthony here with Going Green, show number 96. We've been talking about Russell Brand and a new paradigm, a revolution of the social structure in the UK that he's calling for in order to redistribute wealth and to basically take back the planet from its planetary destruction. Well, speaking of which, we've just received overnight the latest IPCC climate change projections for sea level rise. And indeed, this is an updated report from the 2007 report. And indeed, scientists and the public alike bristled at the time of the lowball estimate of under 60 centimetre rise in sea level by 2100. At the time, the IPCC did admit that it did not include the possibility of rapid ice flow. Well, Greenland or the Antarctic end of the sea, indeed, if both were to collapse, they do alone hold enough water to raise sea level by 65 metres. You did hear that correctly. It's 65 metres. That's compared to 0.4 metres from all of the world's mountain glaciers. But researchers' understanding of the ice age was so uncertain, the IPCC said they just couldn't bring themselves to put a number on it. Some things had to be neglected. Because of those projections, they were on the low side. Things today are more certain. In this latest report, released on September the 27th, the IPCC finally could and did put a number on ice flow from the poles. The result was an estimate of sea level rise of 28 to 98 centimetres by 2100. That's more than 50% higher than the 2007 projections. We have our arms around the problem well enough to say there's a limit to how crazy things are going to get, says Ted Scambos, who's the head scientist at the US National Snow and Ice Data Center. But that doesn't mean that everything about sea level is now understood. Far from it. Big questions still hang over the fate of the ice sheets, which the IPCC admits could bump up the most recent projections by tens of centimetres. And there are a ton of smaller factors for researchers to come to grips with. The ocean doesn't rise steadily like water poured into a bathtub. Instead, there are splashes and jiggles in its rise. Weather patterns like El Niño and El Nino can shove tens of centimetres of water up onto shores for months at a time, as they did in California in 1998. Floods in Australia in late 2010 strangely resulted in water piling up on that continent, robbing the oceans of enough water to lower global sea level by 7 millimetres for more than a year. While the ocean grows, the land also shifts. The ground rises where it was once pressed down by glaciers, and river deltas sink as loose sediments compact. What looks like sea level rise in one place might actually be the result of the land falling. All this means that unraveling what the oceans are doing today is a heinously complicated task. Extrapolating their behavior is even trickier. Predicting that into the future is very problematic, notes Chambers. Steve Nerem at the University of Colorado says, "We all think we're committed to a meter of sea level rise by 2100, but we really just don't know exactly how quickly." Nick Anthony here on Going Green, show number 96. We'll take a look at some news in a second, and then we'll be back with the second hour of the show. Stay listening. Welcome back. Nick Anthony here. The time is 3:01. I do hope you're having a good afternoon. I can see some blue sky out of the studio, so it looks like it's a great afternoon. Let's talk about some local news before we jump into our second hour. Last Monday was King Chulalongkorn Day here in Thailand and was a public holiday. King Chulalongkorn is remembered by all Thais as the great beloved king. He was one of the great kings of Thailand and someone who worked hard throughout his life to improve the life for the Siamese. He managed to keep the core of Siam independent of the predatory colonial giants of the time, the only state in Southeast Asia to achieve this. His reign is recalled as a golden age of justice, progress, and national pride, and is the reason his portrait is still seen in hanging in many homes and businesses around the country. To find out more about this amazing monarch, take a look at the PhuketNews.com and click over to the information on King Chulalongkorn. Has some history about his policies, history about the family, and indeed why he was so revered in Thai culture. Locally, from the Phuket News website, Phuket has tightened up measures to regulate jet ski rentals here on the island. Phuket's Regional Harbour Master Office has tightened up its regulations, making operators now subject to license revocation if the office receives any complaint on violence or unfair advantage taking of tourists. That's very good news. Jet ski operators who fail to report to the office of their acknowledgement of these new regulations by the end of next month without a sound reason could indeed have their licenses revoked. He said that pier masters will have to inform the office of any expired jet ski licenses within 3 months from the day of their acknowledgement. So good news there on jet skis. Let's hope it continues and we see safer seas. Also in this weekend's edition of the Phuket News, and you can buy it on hard stands, it's available for 20 baht. Let's take a quick look at some of the environmental and indeed local, societal and well-being sections from this weekend's newspaper. On page 2 is an article on transportation and details on a new heavy rail link between Suratani, which is the province bordering Koh Samui, down south here to Phuket. They're now being studied. Aegis, a rail from Singapore, has won the feasibility study. On page 4, an article on well-being, that is tourist safety. Tom Allen from Palm Beach in New South Wales joined local surf lifeguards this week to train and support better education and awareness of Phuket's surf issues. He's the first Aussie to come over as a new program of cooperation between Phuket and Australian lifeguards. He suggests better information at the airport, warning tourists of the risks that swimming in these wild seas at this time of the year do indeed face. A Chinese and a Russian tourist died Thursday by currents at Kata Beach, which is a notoriously difficult beach as the waves are small, but the undercurrent is very fast. On Life section on page 3 is an interview with Sean Panton. In about 5 minutes, I'll play that interview from Tim and from Tim Newton talking to Claire Connell from the Phuket News about Sean. And Sean, of course, is the founder of Seek here on the island. He's passionate about the environment, my partner in crime in lots of environmental wranglings here on Phuket. And he's a very good friend of the governor and advisor to local politicians. Well done, Sean. Keep up the good fight. We're winning on the island. Also on page 4 is an article that I lended some quotes to on the coral bleaching and integrated coastal management workshop that took place the week before last up in the JW Marriott Mai Khao. That was sponsored by WWF and Seek, and topics included the 2010 bleaching event and the lessons learnt, building resilience for Phuket's coastline, identifying and prioritizing research, and indeed considering responsive actions. In 2009, 35,000 out of the total 96,000 rai of Thai coral reefs was destroyed. So by 2009, 1/3 of about 40,000 acres of coral reef was destroyed. In 2010, when we had the heavy coral bleaching, 70% of those corals died, and we've now seen about a 10 to 20% recovery. In 2013, Thai coral reefs have been assessed as only 1% being in good to very good condition. 84% are now poor to very poor, and 15% are effectively dead. Good news in 2014 is that there is now a NOAA, NOAA, which is an international coastal conservancy. They have an early warning coral bleaching beacon system and a temperature monitoring platform that now is giving us an early warning system here for Asian waters. So good news. The program is really about building resilience, promoting healthy ecosystem management, supporting the Ridge to Reef program with all of the green clubs, and reducing reef stresses, which include things like silt control, freshwater runoff, waste removal, overfishing, pollution, snorkelers, wrecking reefs, spearfishing, and indeed local speedboats dropping anchors on reefs. On the land, we have the green clubs, recycling stations, silt control. We are working on issues such as education in local schools. The government has been clamping down on beach encroachment, and indeed the island is considering climate change. And the other two articles that were interesting in page 10 on the life section, a very good article about Koh Tachai, which is in the Similans National Park, just north of Phuket. Similans is now open for business, so grab your scuba tanks and head north when you get some nice weather. It's an amazing place, and as you'll read about, Koh Tachai is the northernmost island of the Similans. It's about another 2 hours slow drive from the middle island, number 5, but it's well worth the adventure. It's a beautiful beach, and it's a paradise island. And lastly, on encroachment, we've been talking about that over the last month, particularly on the beaches, but the focus this last week has been on new plans to put a road into Freedom Beach. It's actually met stiff opposition from locals who claim the current dirt road was cut illegally originally. Says one local, where was the forestry department? Let's take a quick look at the weather out there. It's 29 degrees after a low of 24 overnight. Good days coming. Looks like by Monday, Tuesday we'll have fabulous weather. Only 60% chance of rain today and tomorrow. Likely overnight or early in the morning. The winds are light at 11 kilometers an hour, not expected to pick up, and they're coming from the southeast. Swells are only half a meter and should stay steady over the next few days. High tide was at 2:48 this afternoon, so we'll see low tide this evening at 8:20 p.m. Sunset is at 6:08. That's about 20 minutes earlier than it was only 8 weeks ago, and the sunrise tomorrow morning at 6:30. So do stay tuned. I'll be back with the second half of the Going Green show number 96 in just a few moments. Welcome back, Phuket. Nick Anthony here with Going Green show number 96. Seems like our show today is all about a revolution and revolutionaries. We've had Jason Wilder. We've had Russell Brand. We indeed have had Sean Panton from Seek. And to keep this play going, I'm going to play a little message for you from the Prince of Wales, who has a video message that was written to the National Pension Fund's annual conference, which took place in Manchester just last week. Here's a message for global investors about the state of the planet and urgent need for action. Let's take a listen. Prince of Wales.
SeaWorld trainers at the end of the film.
They actually go out there. I tagged along with them. They go there for a kind of a reunion of sorts every year, every July. So they go and see the southern residents.
Sorry, we're going to come back on that one. We have another video playing at the same time. Just give me 1 second, and we'll keep this going. The Prince of Wales, of course, in the Prince of Wales in the UK, has been a environmentalist for best part of a couple of decades. He, in fact, was educated partially in Australia at a place called Timbertop, a school that I went to. And it was a school that focused at the age of 15 on being outdoors and enjoying the outdoors, being at one with nature, understanding things such as plant biology, how mountains were formed. Indeed, you learned how to ski, how to survive, how to get out in the mountains, and was a great grounding for being in tune with Mother Earth. And the Prince of Wales has often said that his time in Timbertop in Australia was one of his more formulative, and indeed one of the things that's grounded him to become such an environmentalist and stand up for the planet and indeed support a better future. Let's take a listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to have been asked by the National Association of Pension Funds to say a few words about your role in the creation of a sustainable financial system. And I need hardly say how sorry I am that I cannot be with you in person. Now, I don't think you need me to tell you that we live in increasingly uncertain times. We are facing what could be described as a perfect storm. The combination of pollution and overconsumption of finite natural resources, the very real and accumulating risk of catastrophic climate change, unprecedented levels of financial indebtedness, and a population of 7 billion that is rising fast. The world is not even feeding its current population, let alone the 9 or 10 billion now expected by 2050. So what does this gathering storm mean for all of you? I would argue that as the largest class of institutional investor, and as a sector that is defined by your long-term liabilities, you have a need, and arguably a duty, to ensure that these emerging environmental, social and economic risks are identified and managed. With an aging population, and pension fund liabilities that are therefore stretching out for many decades, surely the current focus on quarterly capitalism is becoming increasingly unfit for purpose. There is also mounting evidence from the likes of Harvard and London business schools that those companies that improve the way they tackle environmental and social challenges prove to be the ones better able to deliver long-term returns. So you can have your cake and eat it. Recently, I convened an event for pension funds, along with 4 of my charitable initiatives, to look at the issue of resilient investing for the long term. And I was struck by a number of the comments I heard. For example, Paul Woolley, a former investor who now runs a centre on capital markets at the London School of Economics, noted that for a fund manager, trying to do the best each year is a recipe for doing badly in the long term. And David Blood, who set up Generation Investment Management with Al Gore, shared his investment record, which demonstrates clearly that the integration of sustainability leads to long-term value creation. Now, I know that old habits die hard and that it is difficult to make the first move, but is there not a case for ensuring your portfolios are resilient in the long term? Could you do so by incorporating sustainability into your mainstream strategy rather than having it sit in a subordinate silo? Moreover, by contributing to the long-term sustainability of nature's economy, in other words, the maintenance of vital ecosystem services on which the durability of our own economy ultimately depends, pension funds can help to preserve the real value of beneficiaries' retirement income. Ladies and gentlemen, your sector plays a very significant role indeed in how our economic system works, both now and in the future. So it really does fall to you, I'm afraid, to help shape a system designed for the 21st and not the 19th century, which is why I can only urge you to deploy your considerable human ingenuity to make that innovative and imaginative leap that the world so badly needs. Otherwise, your grandchildren, and mine for that matter, will be consigned to an exceptionally miserable future. Now, I'm sure that those distinguished people who are waiting to speak will have some ideas as to how to get the ball rolling.
Prince Charles there, talking about the state of the planet. Nick Anthony, Going Green. We'll be back in just a few moments. Stay tuned. This is Matchbox 20 with Bright Lights. Nick Anthony back here with you on the Going Green show number 96. And having just heard that story about Tommy the Tank and his American diner and a tuk-tuk, has some interesting connotations and ideas. I like it's locally built. I like it's locally made, which is fantastic. Unfortunately, though, they're obviously not doing the most environmentally friendly products. So maybe I'll talk to Tommy and make sure, one, he doesn't give out too much plastic. Second, he's banned polystyrene. And then we'll see if we can come up with some veggie and healthy options. Well, I was actually reading something about beer just this morning, as tomorrow is National Beer Day in America. And you're probably asking, what does beer have to do on the Going Green show? Well, in fact, did you know that ethanol, which is the intoxicant in a beer, is a very powerful antiseptic? Well, that's one reason why it's probably good for you. The other thing is that beer strengthens your bones. It's got a high level of silicon, which increases the calcium deposits and minerals for bone tissue. Also, did you know that beer contains almost all of the minerals that we need to survive? And indeed, did you know also that the first beer menus were as far back as, and actually the recipes for making beer go back as much as 4,000 years. There we are. How about that? Beer stats from the Going Green show. You weren't expecting it. Let's move to something a little different. I'm going to review a documentary which was just released on Wednesday this week called Blackfish. Blackfish is a movie about ostensibly SeaWorld and killer whales in captivity and the thick broiling lies about the real situation. It's been released this week, including an airing on CNN, which was interesting on Thursday. And as a result, partially of that CNN airing, it's getting huge attention. Being from Magnolia Pictures, a very established film company, they do have global distribution in cinemas, which is unusual for a documentary, and is probably the most stunning, visually and shockingly presented documentary since we saw The Cove about Taiji dolphin killing. Quick update on Taiji. Actually, we've just gone for just over 2 weeks with no killing in The Cove, largely because they've had a typhoon hitting Japan. That typhoon is lifting over the next 2 days, so we'll keep an eye on the Twitter and hopefully that they've not been out hunting dolphins. Well, Blackfish is all about killer whales, and it does compellingly describe many of the reasons why keeping orcas in captivity is, and always has been, a bad idea. The main premise of this film is that these large, intelligent social predators are dangerous to their trainers. But orcas are also directly harmed by being confined in concrete tanks, and the science is growing to support this common sense conclusion. Gabriella Carpwithwaite is the director, and she was interviewed on BYOD, Bring Your Own Documentary. Let's take a little listen about this new documentary and what she's got to say about it. Gabriella Carpwithwaite, and the documentary is called Blackfish.
Try that much harder.
That's right. That's right. And John Crow was the one guy who put the historical, I think, world and reference in context for me.
He was
just
great.
as a storyteller. So that was it.
I mean, straight out of hair and makeup. After 14 hours, let's take a look at John Crow and look at capturing orcas.
It was a really exciting thing to do until everybody wanted to do it.
What were they telling you were going to do?
Capture orcas.
They had aircraft, they had spotters, they had speedboats, they had bombs they were throwing in the water. They were lighting their bombs with acetylene torches in their boats and throwing them as fast as they could to herd the whales into coves. But the orcas had been caught before, and they knew what was going on, and they knew their young ones would be taken from them. So the adults without young went east into cul-de-sac, and the boats followed them, thinking they were all going that way, while the mothers with babies went north. But the capture teams had aircraft, and they have to come up for air eventually, and when they did, the capture teams alerted the boats and said, oh no, they're going north, the ones with babies. So the boats, the speedboats, caught them there and herded them in. And then they had fishing boats with seine nets that they would stretch across so none could leave, and then they could just pick out the young ones.
We ended up just going with my footage.
So he goes on to talk about what he felt as they separated the babies. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so he, I think John Crow, this was just a summer job for him, and he was just kind of a young man, and they needed a really experienced diver, and so he went into a pod of killer whales, and his job was to capture the little ones. So,
for shipping costs.
That's right, because they're lighter, and again, once they land in a place, who doesn't want to see a baby shamu? They're worth a tremendous amount of money. And they can be trained, all the way up, starting from, calf size. So he just remembers putting his hands on whales and moving them. And when he was moving this one calf, he just couldn't believe that the whole family stayed there, and her whole pod stayed there and kept calling at her. And then she would call back to them, and they were having this dialogue. And it was like this grieving moment. And he, this big burly guy, who you'd think wouldn't necessarily be affected by it, said it was just visceral. Everybody who was there suddenly knew what they were doing, and everything came into perspective. We were, taking this a baby from its family, and they're screaming at it, and the baby's screaming back, and who knows what they're saying. But the fact that they all stayed there and sort of, essentially could have all been captured, and putting themselves in danger to just not leave that calf, he can't really live with that. I mean, he has a hard time shaking it even to this day. So then, I think this was, cathartic. Anytime he speaks about this, it's sort of cathartic for him, and it's a visceral interview as a result of that.
Director Gabriella Carpethwaite, they're talking about Blackfish, a new documentary about specifically killer whales at SeaWorld in California, and a call to boycott all killer whale displays around the world. That goes also for dolphins. We are seeing a real sea change in attitudes towards the capture of marine animals for display. That documentary goes on to detail some of the financial amounts that dolphins and orcas in captivity raise for these corporations, and the blatant lies that they tell their trainers, and the blatant lies they tell the public about these killer whales. They live about half as long in captivity. They rasp their teeth against the rails, so they break off and they get abscesses in their mouth. They speak different dialects, so there's different whales from different areas, so they can't communicate. They're penned in overnight, 3 killer whales in a tiny little cement concrete box. And indeed, in one instance there, one of the males is physically abused by the 2 females every evening by them rasping their teeth along his back, and because he would fail to do some of the tricks. And if he failed to do the trick, they wouldn't give them food. And so after that, the females would then punish the male. That's Blackfish. Check it out on YouTube, or you can go to myseek.org, take the link through to this week's radio show, and I have all of the content from today's show, as well as the links to the various videos. Check that out online. That's myseek.org. Stay tuned. I'll be back for just a wrap in a moment. The time is 3:52 in the afternoon, fine Saturday afternoon. Sun is trying hard to come out, so if you've got a minute this afternoon, pop out for a swim and take a look what will undoubtedly be an amazing sunset.
9.5.
Nick Anthony back with you on Going Green, show number 96, just making a wrap for this afternoon show. I do hope you enjoyed it. Thanks very much for listening, and indeed thank you very much for supporting a greener and better Phuket. A monsoon period is actually still in full force for the next couple of weeks, so do still expect heavy westerly storms, at least a couple coming through until mid-December, and they will continue to bring ocean trash to our beaches and to our island. We've been amidst a litter and trash crisis with increasing waste volumes. However, positive change since 2010 is already making a big difference. Roadside litter is better, beach trash is reduced, and with the support of the green clubs, we've been very fortunate to get now community action around the island to support the government in ensuring that Phuket is a clean and green destination. We're facing a crisis of overcapacity, not just on Phuket, but in many places such as Bali and in the Philippines and many of their islands. There's been many decades of over-exploitation, natural area degradation, and we need to aggressively pursue short and long-term goals to ensure Phuket is sustainable. You heard from revolutionaries today. You heard from Russell Brand. We heard from Prince Charles. We heard about Blackfish and people standing up for animal rights. And we heard from our very own Jason Wilder. We're all revolutionaries in our own way. We must stand up. We must be counted. We must do what's right. And we really have to support the place that we live, that we love, and that we call home, our island, Phuket. Thanks very much for listening today, and do have a fantastic weekend. I hope the sun comes out for you. And if you're free, a reminder, pop up to Mike Our Dream over the bridge up in Natai. You head to Koklo Town and turn left to the beach. Head down there and take a right, follow the signs to the Mike Our Dream where Jason is DJing this evening. So go along and have a fantastic night. This is it for me. Stay tuned. We've got coming up now tunes non-stop until 6 p.m. And then we have Saturday Night Fever coming on from 6 until 12. Sunday morning, we have Breakfast Classified in the morning from 9 till 11. And then Jason is indeed back on tomorrow from 11 till 2 with his Sunday brunch show. Always some fantastic music. In the afternoon, you've got Dom Lau with Asia Pop 40, the latest and greatest coming out from around the world. Then we've got a quiet Sunday afternoon with the Chill Factor from 7. So with a mellow moment starting off from 5 till 7, followed by the Chill Factor with Colin Hanslip from 7 till 9. And lastly, the Sunday Chill show now from 9 till 12. Bring us back over to Monday morning. Here we are. Enjoy your weekend. Stay tuned every Saturday, 2 to 4 p.m. on your air with Going Green. Nick Anthony, have a fantastic day.